We obviously want to talk about Trump's comments yesterday after we had filmed our video denouncing his ridiculous pandering to the white supremacist movement. He said even more outrageous things when he was cornered by reporters. Seemingly when you take him away from some sort of script and when he just speaks from the heart, he just goes off the handle of whatever heart he does have. And he blamed the alt-left and said some of them deserve blame for what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is unbelievable because the alt-left were the counter-protesters to hateful Nazis, and you would think that Americans having fought the Nazis, hundreds of thousands of Americans dying to fight the Nazis in World War II, that this Republican president would have some sort of historical context about that, but he is a draft dodger, so maybe he doesn't know a ton about war. He essentially said that there were some very good people or bad people in that group, referring to the alt-right and the Nazis that were there, but you also have some very fine people, he said. So let's listen to what he had to say, and then we'll break it down.
When you say the alt-right, define alt-right to me. You define it. Go ahead.
Well, I'm saying,
define it for me. Come on, let's go.
Senator McCain defined them as the same group.
Okay, what about the alt-left that came charging him? Excuse me. What about the alt-left that came charging at the, as you say, the alt-right? Do they have any semblance of guilt?
This is Senator McCain's statement.
Let me ask you this. What about the fact they came charging with clubs in their hands, swinging clubs? Do they have any problem? I think they do. So, as far as I'm concerned, that was a horrible, horrible day. Wait a minute. I'm not finished. I'm not finished, fake news. That was a horrible day. I will tell you something. I watched those very closely, much more closely than you people watched it. And you have you had a group on one side that was bad, and you had a group on the other side that was also very violent. And nobody wants to say that, but I'll say it right now. You had a group on the other side that came charging in without a permit, and they were very, very violent. Go ahead.
Do you think that what you call the alt-left is the same as neo-Nazis?
All of those people, excuse me, I've condemned neo-Nazis. I've condemned many different groups, but not all of those people were neo-Nazis, believe me. Not all of those people were white supremacists by any stretch. Those people were also there because they wanted to protest the taking down of a statue, Robert E. Lee.
This guy, I mean, it doesn't get as far right as this and as insane as this. He's essentially saying Robert E. Lee, who was a traitor to America, who seceded from the Union and said, I am going to fight to start my own country just to protect the institution of slavery. States' rights. Oh, states' rights to do what? Own slaves. He's making like a comparison to the founder of the United States. You don't really get as far off than that, and as twisted of a logic, as far right extreme of a logic. Even Ted Cruz isn't as far right as that. Trump has clearly been reading or has been internalizing some really dangerous stuff. And I guarantee you that he saw those Nazis marching through, some of them in Make America Great Again hats, and his ego, his unbelievable ego, was so stroked that he like was flattered by it, and he didn't want to hurt their feelings and didn't want to turn on them. And even the most conservative Republicans are turning on him now. I mean, I didn't think he could get worse than on many sides, that speech, but this was way worse.
I think that I'm not really sold on, like, this is the breaking point for Donald Trump, because every single time the media and people have felt this is the breaking point for Donald Trump, the corporate media has just kind of moved on after 4 or 5 days. If you remember, when he was a candidate, he talked about thousands of Muslims cheering on a rooftop during 9/11. Everybody thought that would be it. Then the pussy grabbing, excuse my French, everybody thought that would be it. And he's done a million things since being president that most people thought that would be it. I think that this is pretty incorrigible. However, I also think that because I worked for Fox and then MSNBC, the corporate media is just built to basically have short attention spans. And Trump, maybe his administration, are going to toss out something either radical or controversial within the next 2-3 days, and they'll probably move on.
Or he'll bomb someplace and they'll call him presidential.
Exactly.
Right.
So, you know, I don't really need to respond to what he said yesterday. I mean, I think it's been said well enough. It's deplorable. I think the thing that he really doesn't understand is he's equating, you know, when he was talking about on Friday night, not Saturday, when the car ran over the woman who died, who, by the way, there was a memorial for her today. Her mother spoke very eloquently, I thought, Heather Heyer.
Yeah.
He was talking about, you know, there was people silently protesting Friday night. They had fucking KKK torches screaming about Jews will not replace us.
And guns. I mean, I watched that whole Vice documentary. The guy literally had 4 Glocks in his, like, waistband because you're such a huge man, that you're such a little pussy, that you think that you have to go to a rally where you're just, that you're going to be attacked. You're not some militia man. You're just some speck in the universe that's going to get washed away by the tides of history as a literal piece of shit.
And I think that if you haven't been paying attention, the updates are his whole Business Economic Council has, quote, disbanded, which essentially means the Trump administration decided to end it because people were, business leaders were leaving leaving it every hour. There was a new business person leaving. I have mixed feelings on that in particular because they weren't leaving when he proposed a Muslim ban or deporting all these people and, you know, the 25 other terrible things he's done. His actions have been deplorable and un-American, yet business leaders only will leave when their business is on the line. Make no mistake, they cannot stay on anything connected to Trump at this point and keep credibility for their companies. But the thing that's really, I think, the next thing to watch is how it all plays out from here. You would think Gary Cohn, who I believe is his like chief of the Economic Council or some stuff like that, he's Jewish. It was reported that he was just frustrated and all that. Whether he resigns, there might be some other people who resign. But I think the most important thing is at this point, I am not sure. I really can't give you a gut instinct because I don't have one. I am not sure if Trump is saying these things or not saying these things simply to cater to a base anymore. I don't know if he's simply trying to cater to a base.
I think it's beyond that.
Or if he simply is just a racist and he doesn't know he's a racist. Because it's kind of just, forget politics, like, you know, a middle school student or, you know, or less can be told the two scenarios of, you know, KKK people versus, you know, the Antifada or whatever they're calling it, and know that the two sides are not equal. So I don't really think it's really playing to a base. I think this is just who he is. He is a racist. He really believes, as we've seen from the Central Park Five, to the way he talks about African Americans, my African American over there, he really believes that there is, on all things, bad hombres on all sides, and obviously his daughter cannot convince him otherwise. She's Jewish, her husband's Jewish, so neo-Nazis didn't even deter him from defending his daughter and son-in-law. So, you know, I think that this is going to go on for a few more days. I think the corporate media will move on to something else. Who knows? Maybe Jeff Sessions will open a case into something radical that will deter their attention, or he'll bomb somebody. I'm just not convinced that this is it for Donald Trump. I know Cenk did a segment yesterday, kind of like declaring him KO'd, and that's it. I just don't agree. I don't think that's it. I think a lot of his supporters, frankly, might raise an eyebrow at this, but I don't know if they're going to fully abandon him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a core 30% of this country that, you know, one of my best friend's moms is a hardcore Trump supporter, and any criticism, she just gets, like, red-faced and furious. They're just immune to facts at this point. And they just want that bloodthirstiness. They are the people that would follow the strongest ape in the pack, you know, the one who beats his chest the most. They just like that Trump just says what he means and says what he says and screws over other people, and they are turned on, not, you know, obviously sexually, but politically and by that kind of rhetoric. I also will say that how Trump sees the world is such a disturbing part of the presidency, because he again sees people as winners and losers, and my people and people who aren't mine. So he doesn't see himself as serving the American people. The reason he won't denounce the alt-right and the Nazis that participated in this rally is because he sees them as my people, the people that are loyal to me, the people that like me. So it's never about what's best for the country. It's about what's best for him. And I think we saw that to the fullest extreme with these comments and after the Charlottesville protests and the murder that happened there. So it just is a huge window into his disturbed, unstable psyche. And
just an update, Jamie Dimon, who was very key in the collapse of the economic system here and destroying the 401ks of many of you watching, he just issued a statement saying, I strongly disagree with Trump's reaction to Charlottesville, to the events that took place in Charlottesville, and he agreed with disbanding Trump's economic council. So I think Jamie Dimon left the council, Richard Trumka, the head of the AFL-CIO, and many other business leaders left. The last thing I'll say on this is I think that...
Also, Trump disbanded the council altogether. Did you see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a child.
Like I said, Trump basically disbanded it because he knew every single hour more business leaders were going to leave the council, and he wanted to just stop the bleeding proactively. But the last thing I'll say is, you know, I don't always want to bring it back to the corporate media, but you must. The bottom line is this. You know, I got grief that I didn't cover Trump as much as as much as I covered Clinton and all that. That's fine. People can criticize me if they want. It comes with the territory. But it's not like Trump wasn't saying a lot of these things and showing these sinister tones for 2 years. Jake Tapper, who, by the way, is probably one of the better of the worst. Jake Tapper interviewed him where he played dumb on not knowing what the KKK was or not knowing who David Duke was. He very tepidly pushed back on him, and then he moved on to a question about what's your criteria for a vice presidential pick. I mean, the list goes on and on. You know, Morning Joe, who's leading the resistance now, and how did this happen? They let him call in his underwear, and I remember after one of the debates, Mika started to show, oh, Donald, that was a fabulous performance. In that same performance, he was talking about banning Muslims from the country. So there is media culpability here. Maybe I have a little bit at fault as well, but it's always troubling to me when you start seeing, yes, it's correct that the media is condemning him and politicians are condemning him, but it's easy to do it now. Where were you then? You were giving him unlimited airtime, and you were normal, as Susan Sarandon, hate to name drop, was saying to me that he's normalized racism, and they helped him do it.
They absolutely helped him do it, and how they helped him do it is focusing on the horse race and the spectacle and not on substance. And that's really the heart of what the media... There's two really glaring, overarching main problems with the corporate media and mainstream media. It's that, one, they focus on who's up, who's down, and the lack of substance in their policy discussions. And secondly, it's that their media narratives are dominated by an adoration for the establishment. Their criticisms about Trump have not been substantive. They've been because he has violated their adoration for the mystique of the presidency, for the gorgeous city on a hill way they view the U.S. presidency, the staple of American history, and he's violated that. He's been very rude. Yes, that's a disturbing aspect of it, but more disturbing are the policies that he's enacting and that are going to harm the American people for decades to come because the Democratic Party couldn't beat this clown.